everyone, I'm Maureen, and we're going to be learning how to make McCall's 8615. Now this is a unisex pattern, and we're going to be making view B, which is right here, and also the one that the male model is wearing. So go ahead and cut out your pattern pieces for view B, and let's get started. First, you're going to take pattern piece number 1 and do a stay stitch down to the center front, going in this arrow direction here. Now we're going to work on our pocket. So pattern piece number 2, which is the pocket, has an inverted pleat. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. And first you're going to mark, put little notches here so you know where to fold. And then for this, you are going to crease this to one side. And even though this is a straight edge, or this is a dotted line and then a solid line and then another dotted line, the only thing I'm actually going to worry about here are the dots for now. And I'm doing this a little bit different than the instructions in the pattern, but you will get the same result. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just like this. So now I have like this little square. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just going to draw a line straight up and straight down. Straight up, straight down. So now, if you've got a point turner, I feel like this works better. If you don't, you can always just use your finger. Put a pin at the dot. Another pin at the dot. And we're going to take this to our machine, back stitch here, and then stitch out. Okay. So you've done your stitches. Open up your pocket, and we have what almost looks like an inverted pleat. However, we're going to use this tool again, and you're going to finger press or press this out. Now don't get me wrong, you're still going to press this flat, but this helps because if your fabric is very thick or kind of stubborn, this is a great stepping stone. Alright, so we've gone ahead and we've pressed this flat. Go ahead and do a 1/4 inch press under on that raw edge on top. And then following those notches we did on the side, now you're going to take this to your machine and you are going to stitch at a 5/8 all the way around, and then you're going to do a row of gather or basting stitches right in here as well. So cut into those corners. And then you're going to turn this right side out, just like this. And we're going to give this a press around all of the edges. And you're going to top stitch this, this hem right here. Okay, so as you can see, I did start pressing on the sides, but it's hard to do it around the edges. So what you're going to do is you're going to gently pull these so that you start to see a little bit of a gather or a ruffle starting to take place, and that's a good sign. Now you're not going to pull the thread completely out because all we're trying to do is ease in this corner right here. Same thing on this side. Okay, once you've pressed in those curves, this part doesn't have to be pretty. We're not going to see that later on. But you are going to grab pattern piece number 1. And on the bottom 2 dots of the shirt here, you're going to pin this in place. Okay, so take this to your machine and do 2 rows of top stitching all the way around. After stitching this down, we are going to move on to our pocket flap. All right, pattern piece number 3 is next. So go ahead and put these right sides together. Take this to your sewing machine and sew it at 5/8 all around. Once you do that, go ahead and trim the sides down. Turn your pocket flap right side out, making sure all of the corners and edges are nice and crisp. And you can take your point turner and help with this. And you want to take this to your iron and press it out as well. All right, and then you are going to top stitch 1/4 inch from the edge. Once you are done top stitching, go ahead and add your buttonhole maker and complete this step. Placing your pocket flap on the 2 dots, go ahead and pin that, and you're going to stitch this down at 3/8. Press your pocket flap down, and then you're going to do a top stitch on the top edge there. Set those to the side and go ahead and do a stay stitch across your back yoke pieces, and you're going to do it starting at the shoulder and going towards the center back, and you're going to do that for both of your back yoke pieces. Put those to the side, and now we are going to work on pattern piece number 5, and we're going to make a single pleat here. So what you're going to want to do is fold along the solid lines and bring those folds to the broken lines and pin them in place. And then you are going to baste across the raw edge at your machine. Once you give that a good press, this is how your pleat should look. And then we're going to take this is our back piece, and then we're going to take pattern pieces number 6, and we're going to sandwich them between these pieces. So put one short side along this edge here, just like that. So now you have 3 pieces that are all together. Make sure you match up those notches. Okay, and we're going to take this to our machine and sew through all thicknesses. After you're done stitching this down, go to your iron and give this a good press, and also trim your seam allowance. All right, so we have our back piece here. Make sure that the right side is looking up at you. We've pressed it, trimmed the seams. Go ahead and move that bottom one out of the way. So now you just have a single yoke layer. Then grab your 2 front pieces. Pin your front pieces at the shoulder, right sides together. First, you're going to gently roll up your 2 front pieces out of the way and above the yoke seam line, just like you see me doing right here. And you're going to want to make this really nice and neat. Next, you're also going to roll up this back pattern piece as well, leaving the yoke piece free underneath it. Once you see that free yoke piece, go ahead and attach it to the other shoulder pieces there. And what you're essentially doing is making a burrito. So now you're going to reposition your clips. That way it's through all 3 layers of your pattern pieces. And once you reposition your clips, you are going to take this to your sewing machine and sew it at the shoulder seams at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so now we're back at our cutting table. We are going to trim this seam allowance down just to reduce bulk here. Once you are done trimming down the seam allowances, you are going to start pulling the pattern pieces out, right sides out through the neckline, just like you see me doing here. Just like that. So at this point, I want you to give your shirt a really good press. And once you're done pressing your shirt, you are going to do 2 rows of top stitching over here, just like this, and 2 rows of top stitching right here. So we are working a little bit out of order with the instructions, but the end result will be a completed shirt just the same. It's just that I much rather prefer doing a flat sleeve method on this shirt, and so for that reason we are going to work on the sleeve now. So we are going to do a sleeve placket, which I know sounds super intimidating, but it's actually pretty easy and pretty satisfying to do. So first thing I want you to do is on the wrong side, I don't know if y'all can see that W on my sleeve, but on the wrong side of your sleeve, go ahead and mark these same exact markings based on your pattern piece. And then on pattern piece number 11, transfer all of your markings there as well, including this too. I would also do your markings on both sides of this, okay? So that's the first step. Make sure you transfer all of your markings. Next step, you are going to stitch right in this corner here at 3/8, and we're going to clip in that notch. Once you take care of this stitch, clip it right here. Now you're going to do a 1/4 inch stitch here, which I've already done, and then you're also going to do a 1/4 inch I can't talk 1/4 inch stitch starting at the bottom and then going around. I'm calling this the little house, just like that. Okay. Once you have done this, go ahead to your iron and press in on this side and on this side, going all the way around the house. Now, because this is so narrow right here, you can either do a finger press or take your point turner and use that edge to flatten it and then press it. Now, because these arrows or these shorter points may not lay as flat, you can always just clip in little notches to kind of help those edges lay flatter. So now this is what this should look like. Okay. Okay, so now that you have pressed this nice and good, I have already prepared a needle and thread, because the next step is you are going to put the wrong side sleeve to the right side of this placket, just like this. I'm going to move this up so you guys can see better. And so as you can see, that's a little bit of an obstructive, it kind of obstructs your view. So what I like to do here is put my needle through all the points and really just do like a very loose running stitch. I'm using button thread, by the way, so that way you guys can actually see it and whatnot, but I think that you can do any thread here and just do like a quick running stitch. This is gonna help all of like the placket pieces and everything stay in place, and it's gonna make for a neater finish for sure. And because like I said, this is going to be very loose because I want to be able to pull it out later. So now we are going to take this to our sewing machine and stitch along the blue rectangle here, and then we're going to come back to our table. I'll tell you what to do next. All right, so I've taken out the thread, and now you are going to slice through the middle line, and I'm gonna stop to like right about here, and then I'm gonna use my scissor the rest of the way. Just like that. And then I am going to turn this right side out. I know it looks a little silly right now. It almost feels uncomfortable, like, am I doing this right? And the answer is yes. So go ahead and get your point turner. And now we are on the outside of the sleeve. Okay. Now press the seam allowance towards the placket piece. And once you press that towards the placket piece, fold it in along the seam line, just like you'll see me do here. And you'll want to put some pins there to secure it. And then you're going to take it to your machine and top stitch it. At the bottom edge, go ahead and do a 5/8 stitch as well. All right, so now we are back at the iron. And now we've got like this space still open. So give this a really good press on this side here. And then on this side, we are going to do the exact same thing. So pressing the seam towards that placket, and then stitch the seam right here. We're going to take this to our machine and stitch this down, do a 5/8 stitch across here, and then we are going to do a stitch across here. Now we're going to do a stitch across the top edge near the dot, and so go ahead and lower your needle and your presser foot in that position and stitch back and forth, making sure to secure the placket and making sure that at this point it almost looks like a vent. All right, now we are going to stitch around the house, as I call it. So I'm going to move my needle back to the edge stitch position. Lower it down my presser foot. Now take your shirt and open it to one side. That way you can see the arm side, right? And now we are going to take our sleeve and right sides together, we are going to set it in. And personally, I much rather prefer to do a set-in sleeve than an eased-in sleeve. I feel like there is less room for correction and error when you do it this way. And honestly, this is if you decide you want to do top stitching across that sleeve seam, you can if you do it this way. So it gives you a few more options as far as like the finish and everything like that. Okay. Now take this to your machine and follow along the curve here and sew it down at 5/8 and then finish this at your serger. Now we are going to sew up our sleeve and our side seam all at once. So turn this right sides together, and from the bottom of the sleeve, meaning at your wrist, going through the armpit area and down into the bottom hem, we are going to pin this right sides together and then sew this up at 5/8, and you'll do this on both sides of your shirt. Finish the seams with a serger or a zigzag stitch and then also give it a good press, and then meet me back at the table. Once you're done finishing the side edges, go ahead and serge the bottom hem, and you can press it under once and then again and then do an edge stitch, but this does call for a narrow hem along the bottom edge. Okay, after you work on your bottom hem, we're gonna go back to the sleeve right here and we're gonna do our cuff. So on the unnotched edge, turn this up 5/8 and give it a good press. Once you do that, go ahead and trim this down as well. And then take this to your iron and press this just like that. After you've pressed this up to the dots here, go ahead and take this to your machine and stitch down the sides. Okay, once you do that, go ahead and trim your seam allowances. And now we are going to turn this right side out. We are going to attach this to our sleeve. Put this here. You want to make sure that the notch matches up to the other notch and that your ends match up as well. So now we're going to stitch this down at our machine. Now we're getting ready to close the cuff, so give this a good press, and then you're going to want to pin this from the outside of the cuff. So have the outside facing you and place your pins so that way it's not only catching the bottom hem on the outside, but also on the inside, because you're going to edge stitch this and edge stitch all around it. Once these are done, go ahead and add your buttonholes to your sleeve placket and your cuffs. Okay, so now we're going to work on our front placket. So take pattern piece number 7, and on the unnotched side, go ahead and press in that edge at 5/8. And then on the notched side, we're going to match up those notches to the front placket here, and we're going to pin that down to your sewing machine and sew it at 5/8. And now we're going to add the uninterfaced placket to this as well. So on the other side of your shirt pattern, we are going to fold up the raw edge the same way we did the interfaced version, and we are going to pin this to the wrong side of the shirt pattern piece. And we are going to take this back to our machine and sew it at 5/8. And we're going to have a little bit of a space underneath because we're going to enclose that. Okay, so make sure you trim that seam allowance down, and at the bottom we are going to enclose this. So now we have a nice clean edge on the bottom there. And then we are going to take this to our iron and we are going to press this placket down. Do a basting stitch at the top, and then we're going to top stitch all the way around the placket. All right, now take pattern piece number 14 and do a stitch line through that dot on the curve there, and then clip not through the thread, but just to that dot there, just like that. So grabbing your interfaced pattern piece number 14, just like how we did on the previous side, go ahead and match up those notches. All right, now take this to your sewing machine and stitch it at 5/8. Okay, now take the other facing, the uninterfaced one, do a 5/8 stitch here, press it under, and this is actually going to be the notch side. So we're kind of doing this side slightly different than we did the other placket. Now we're going to attach this to the placket, except for we are going to attach it on this outer piece here. So starting at the dot where we clipped in that notch, we are going to pin all the way around this placket. I'm going to do a stitch on the bottom to enclose that lower hem as well, and we're going to do that at 5/8. Lowering my needle and my presser foot at the dot, I'm going to take the pin out and begin stitching, back stitching at the front, and then continuing along that curve line, and then pivoting my needle and my presser foot so that I can keep going around those edges nice and neat. All right, so trim those seams down in those corners, press the placket seam towards this pattern piece here, and then you are going to turn this right side out. Down and pin it in place and get ready for our top stitching. After you've given it a good press, go ahead and pin all the way down the placket, and let's get ready to sew it. All right, so now we're going to take our collar band pattern piece number 9, and using the notches, or I'm sorry, using the dots as our road map, we are going to attach this to our collar. So the dot that is furthest out is going to go right here along this edge. same on this side, but I'm going to take it all the way to the edge of the placket. All right, once it's pinned, and you may have to clip in some spaces along that that collar edge there, but go ahead and take this to your machine and sew it up at 5/8. I like to start all of my collar bands and collars at the center back, and so this is what I'm doing here as well. So I'm beginning at the center back and going down one side, removing the pins as I go, and then once I reach that edge, I backstitch forwards and backwards, and then I reposition my blouse so that way it can be on the other side and I can start at the center back yet again. So as you can see, I have repositioned my blouse and I'm starting to sew it up again, going down the center back and then coming towards the outer edge. Doing it this way makes it easier and makes it better so that way the collar and the collar band are not shifting as I'm sewing. Okay, now let's take pattern piece number 8 and right sides together. We are going to pin this. Take this to your sewing machine and do a 5/8 stitch all the way around. After trimming the seam allowance and giving this a good press, go ahead and do 2 rows of top stitching along the borders. Once you do your 2 rows of top stitching, baste across the raw edges. Matching up your dot to your collar edge, add your collar to your collar band and making sure that those notches also line up in the center there as well. Take this to your machine and stitch it down at 5/8. All right, now take your uninterfaced collar band and fold it under 5/8 at the bottom edge. Right sides together. On this top edge here, we're gonna match up the notches and collar band pieces for our closure. Machine and stitch all the way around that edge there and then come back to the sewing table. Trim your seam allowances down, and once you are finished trimming down your seam allowances and going through all thicknesses, you are going to turn your collar band right side out. You're going to give this a really great press at your iron and you are going to pin it in place, and this is going to enclose your entire collar piece here. Take this to your machine and top stitch all the way around. Once you are done top stitching, go ahead and add your buttons to the remaining pieces, including your plackets and your cuffs and your front pockets as needed. And this is how your finished shirt should look. I want to thank you so much for watching that sew along. Now, if you like this channel, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye.